Before we get into this, can I just now dedicate maybe 2 minutes of this lovely podcast to speak about mine and Mickey's biggest snub, which is Babylon.
Well, but we haven't talked about it yet, though.
We haven't. But no, I just wanted to quickly talk about it because I think me and Mickey feel very much the same, and we can discuss this now. Dylan made a very wonderful prediction about Babylon, saying when the three of us went to watch it together, that I'd enjoy it most, followed by you, and that was true.
Yeah.
I think that Babylon is one of the most epic and cinematic experiences I've seen. I think as a filmmaker, I want to have made that movie. I would want to have been on set every day for all the challenges and all the trials and tribulations that they must have gone through to make that film. It is a film that feels beautiful and disgusting at the same time. It feels like a nightmare that you do not want to wake up from, in the sense that La La Land was a beautiful dream of what Los Angeles and the film industry is. Babylon is a beautiful nightmare, and I did not want to wake up from that film. I did not want it to end. I thought the acting was fantastic. Every single technical aspect of that film was brilliant. As a filmmaker, I think we all four of us can relate to things in that film that most people might not be able to, like the sound scene, like the scene where Diego Calva has to drive, miles and miles and miles to get a camera, and it doesn't rock up, and when it does, he just snatches it and runs off. And like when Brad Pitt is kissing the person at sunset, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, we got the take." Yeah. It's magic like that I'm so glad the film has been able to show a wider audience who might not understand the intensity, but also the wonder of filmmaking. And I related to that on every level. The ending, which I would love to ask Mickey about, I really enjoyed it.
I like it besides the Avatar shot.
This is what.
Besides that one shot.
You know what I said?
I love that sequence.
You know what I said to Theo? I said it would have been so much worse if he put Whiplash and La La Land in there as well.
I did like it. To be honest, I didn't love it though. I think it did come out of I was like,
but
this is
one of the
weird.
other things we forget. Obviously, I rewatched it and I was looking at the films they chose. He also put T2 in it.
Yeah.
Put Jurassic Park, yeah.
And he put 2 Cameron films, which is
I think maybe because we saw Avatar recently.
Yeah.
So it really, that was the one where I was like, this is so weird. I was just in 1920s.
That's interesting you say this, because the film was supposed to come out the year before, right? Babylon.
Yes and no. I think it was delayed because of Emma Stone and the COVID, and then
That's interesting. So I don't know. Maybe,
I don't know.
Yeah.
My thing about
but the editing would have happened.
Yeah,
so they would. I think they would have selected that in the editing.
That's true.
My thing about Babylon is that it is a cinematic experience that but I can definitely see myself rewatching this at home, no problem. I can see myself enjoying this at home, no problem. I agree with everything you said. It's a beautiful. The more I think about it, the more I enjoy it and I love it.
Yeah.
I thought the ending was the boldest choice that I've seen a director make in the past 10 years of just completely breaking the rules of logic and just to have this sort of cinematic, idea that he's trying to pitch.
Well, you said it best, mate. You said you felt like you got jizzed on by cinema, which is so true because there's all of these colors and all of these.
All the liquid.
Welcome to the Popcorn Podcast, everybody.
There are kids listening.
The thing with Babylon and why I like it less than you guys potentially is because of these amazing set pieces right throughout the film. You've got the opening, then you've got the film when they're both in these different things. I found there was never the emotional heart of something like Boogie Nights that ends with a family and it's sort of at its core. This ends in a sort of cokey because Margot's on coke the whole time. I never really bought the connection between Diego Calva's character and Margot Robbie's character because of that sort of intensity that she brought. I always just had that little bit of irritation of just come on, rein it in a bit.
Can I ask, do you wish the film was a bit slower and would kind of stop?
I wish that there were certain bits which would just push me out of the enjoyment of the film, where I'd be really enjoying it and then she'd eat all the food and cover herself and I'd just be like, I don't buy that. Or she'd come to ask for him for help about the gambling addiction, and then he comes back and she's got back on the coke and she's he's driving and she's covering his eyes and he pulls over the car and tries to fill up with petrol and she runs off. those bits were just irritating to me as a character. I was just like,
that's interesting.
Being drawn away. But I thought the arsehole of LA tunnel sequence was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So there were just elements where they just dialed it up just to 10 when it could have been dialed to 8 and would have brought it down a little, a notch for maybe people to appreciate.
In contrast, I'm very curious what you think about the whole Nelly thing, because I think that the draw of the character and the appeal of the character is that she is impossible, and that the romance between her and Manny was kind of cursed from the very beginning. And they were, like, I always have a thing for films, romance films, in my opinion, the best ones, aside from When Harry Met Sally, because that's the GOAT. But every other good romance film, it's never clear if they end up together at the end. The Before trilogy, not clear. La La Land, they don't. Midnight in Paris, no, they don't. So this one, they don't.
I think
it's more interesting.
That's a good point. I think they lacked a little bit of chemistry, to be honest, up until he got successful as a character.
Yes.
Because then they had more scenes together.
Yeah.
And then I just bought it more. Because before that scene when like he meets her again, they had 2 scenes together.
Yeah.
So I just didn't, it was such a vital part of the film, but I just didn't buy it as much as I maybe should have, because they just didn't share that much screen time. One thing I do want to say about Babylon is every person I've spoken to in person in the UK or Bulgaria has said they love it. And overall, like, theaters are full here. European audiences love it. Yeah. So the reason that I'm like pushing for Babylon as much as I am is because I think it's ridiculous to like look at that film and go objectively that's like a 50% Rotten Tomatoes film.
Yeah.
That is not.
That's
just not the case. The issue is that American audiences found it too vulgar, especially like the opening, which I also don't think it is.
It's not vulgar
because
too much,
European audiences are a bit more used to that sort of thing, but it's because it's the same thing as The Northman, which, by the way, I haven't spoken to enough, but I think The Northman is snubbed in like everything.
It is, yeah.
But The Northman flopped because audiences found it was marketed to be something different.
It was mismarketed.
It was marketed to be like the next Gladiator.
That was literally a quote from the marketing campaign, the next Gladiator. And it was not. It was so much weirder than anybody thought, myself included. It's like proper Robert Eggers. And Babylon is as well. It's not what people expected in the States, probably. So that's why it flopped there, because they just didn't know what they were getting themselves into. But that's why people love it here, because they're like, put that film on in France. In France, that's probably the most like bleak film that came out that year. You know what I mean?
Quick question, it may be too soon to do this in terms of it's just come out, but if you were going to rank Whiplash, La La Land and Babylon, how would that...
in that order.
I think...
in that order, exactly.
Okay, so you would still...
From a personal point of view, Whiplash 1, La La Land 2, Babylon 3. But from a filmmaking point of view, it's the reverse.
I would say La La Land, Whiplash, Babylon. But I love all 3.
I love all 3 as well.
Okay,
that's... La La Land's your favorite?
La La Land is the best, then Whiplash, then Babylon. But I do love all 3. Yeah. They're really good films.
And what's interesting is... I read a review that said basically that, someone like Paul Thomas Anderson romanticizes relationships, quirky relationships, and people coming together, whereas Damien Chazelle throughout his films romanticizes the idea of, sacrifice and legacy. Whiplash, he turns away from his father to do this scene. La La Land,
they break up.
They break up.
Sadly,
Seb, turns, to create his jazz cafe instead of following her to France, and Babylon is the same in terms of legacy, the legacy of cinema. The thing I felt with Whiplash and La La Land is it was a tighter film. The themes were there, and the relationships are all there, and I felt more. I felt more for the characters, and that was the only thing I was disappointed with Babylon. I didn't feel, overly sad when. Is this a spoiler? Are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, sure.
Brad Pitt's character kills himself. Like, right. I really liked his character, but it wouldn't have been the same if Ryan Gosling's character killed himself, because you didn't have that same emotional connection.
That's a good point.
It was a facade of history rather than really getting down and dirty with what these.
Okay, well in that case, let me ask you this. I agree with everything you've said. And I also feel the same way. I care so much more about Andrew Neiman, which, by the way, it's actually Neiman, but J.K. Simmons, the character, says it wrong on purpose to intimidate him. That's in the whatever. But I care so much more about him than I do about Jack Conrad or whatever. But my question to you is, I think Babylon has... Whiplash is the nicest steak and fries dinner you'll ever have. Babylon is the same steak, but you get 4 of them. By steak number 3, you're going to get 4. And I think that's what Babylon is. Because it's snippets of a lot of really, really good stuff, but it might feel too much for some people.
Yeah.
And when you have like incredible food just kind of thrown at you, eventually you are going to get full.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, that might be the case. You know, and you chunder it out like Margot Robbie does in the film. You know what I mean?
Last question. Don't go in depth. You can go for the best pictures. Just one answer. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Babylon?
Babylon.
Theo, go first.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I need to rewatch Babylon. That's my genuine answer. I think that I don't know. Babylon impresses me more. I think overall, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like it's one of my favorite hangout films. I just have fun with it.
Well, Babylon, I think the difference is that Babylon loves filmmaking.
Absolutely.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood loves Hollywood.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Good point.
But one thing I would say is, this is where we probably disagree, is I still think Tarantino and Martin Scorsese for Wolf of Wall Street are able to take sprawling films and still tie it all together so that the audience leaves going, wow, that was really good. Whereas Babylon, clearly 55% Rotten Tomatoes, Damien hasn't been able to get mass appeal for this film. He has, we all love it. We're all film fans and we are biased to Damien Chazelle because we've liked his previous work. But someone walking in who hasn't seen La La Land or Whiplash doesn't have that preconception.
I think that's a really good.
And is thrown into it. He's failed to capture, a story that is universally loved by everyone, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I think you make a really, really good point. And just quickly, just to finish off this Babylon section, Babylon for me, when I heard that firstly, like I don't tend to look into films, especially films I'm super, super excited for. I don't tend to look into films that much nowadays before watching them. I only watch one trailer now, as like a one trailer rule now. For Babylon, when I heard that it was going to be rated like 18 here in the UK, it was like music to my ears because it was like Damien Chazelle. Yeah, he's made Whiplash, but for me, it's like Whiplash is a film I know so well that it's almost like a part of me. So I don't even think of it as this like outrageous, I can't show this to kids kind of film. And then you go and make something like La La Land, which is like it was like a perfect film. It makes you feel good, but it also makes you feel really sad. It's tied up so well. Whiplash is tied up so well. And then he's gone off and done First Man, and of course it hasn't resonated or had the same reaction as his previous 2 films. And now he's done Babylon, which is, in my opinion, by far his riskiest film. He's taken the most risks.
I love how none of us are talking about First Man.
Go on. Someone has to. I really like First Man. I'm just saying. It's his most risky film for sure. And I think I always really respect a director whenever they do take risks, even if not all of them pay off. And yeah, Babylon for me, like I think I had such a visceral reaction to the film in the cinema. I was laughing so much. Like some scenes, like I know, like a lot of people were complaining that they didn't really feel the emotion behind the film, but I got really sad like towards the end with the whole Nelly and Manny situation. And I think the music's incredible. I think Justin Hurwitz's score is always the beating heart and the through line of Damien Chazelle's films, which is just incredible. I think similar to La La Land, what you said about La La Land, it's like all departments of film coming together in such a beautiful and in sync way. And yeah, Babylon for me, like it was one of the most unique theatre experiences I've ever had. And yeah, I think Damien Chazelle, I have this is the beauty of it. I have no idea what he's going to do next. Like this is the thing. Every single one of his films has been different, and everyone always saying like, oh, he's doing jazz and this and that, and it's the same filmmaker. But if you really look at all his films, they are so different from each other. And when you can show that kind of diversity as a director, I think like, yeah.
If I was Damien Chazelle, I would just quit filmmaking. I'd be so
done it all now.
with my career.
One thing weirdly, as you were talking, I was thinking Babylon and Tenet, Christopher Nolan's film, give me a very similar feeling in terms of I will go back and rewatch certain scenes because I think certain sequences are fantastic. A lot of what Robert Pattinson, those scenes I always love when they're sort of doing the heist. And so I'll go back and watch certain scenes because I think it's just phenomenal filmmaking and a director who really understands how to sort of do a sequence.
Yeah.
But both of those films, I think, are directors when they get, you know, a lot
Too much, right?
a lot
Too
of
much.
freedom.
Yeah.
And someone said, you know,
Do whatever you
you've
want.
called the, you know, protagonist, then we might be lacking a bit of character depth, or you know, I think we can all see that with certain directors that their earlier work tends to have a little bit more heart, and then the more money they get, the more
That's very
ideas
true.
they have that may lessen, you know, the integral themes of the film.
It's like Skyfall and Spectre. Exactly this. You know, that's exactly your point. And of course, that was our little chat about Babylon. If you would like to see the rest of the video and the full version of this lovely little podcast that we've assembled together, and see more of these handsome gentlemen, please do go to Dylan's channel, which is called the Popcorn Podcast. We are doing a podcast, but currently without popcorn. We will fix that next time.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm very glad to have 3 fellow flick fanatics on this chat with me, and that is our Babylon video. Cheers, and then go watch Dylan's one because it's actually much better than the one I've just posted. Cheers.